So the news of the day. Oh, hold on. I got to get to the news of the day. It was trending yesterday, and I think I got it trending because I think I was the first one to put out hashtag goodbye CBC, make it trend. And then it got to trending in Canada. I take full credit for that because it's actually fantastic. We're going to go down a little bit of a Twitter rabbit hole here. So the CBC has notified everyone on Twitter that they are pausing their activities on Twitter because they've been labeled by Elon Musk and they don't like it. And I like the meme or the response. What the heck is this? An airport? You don't have to announce your departure. There is literally nowhere on earth that you have to announce your departure. And, to pull out the meme from Jurassic Park, Newman. Hey, everybody, CBC's leaving. See, nobody cares, CBC. CBC makes the announcement that they're pausing their activities on Twitter because they were labeled as state-funded or government-funded media. And then there was a back and forth between Twitter and Elon. They said, we're not 70% funded. We're not 70% funded. They are 70% funded by the government, $1.2 billion. And I don't know if that $1.2 billion goes to CBC and Radio-Canada, the French equivalent. $1.2 billion, 70% of their funding comes from the government, and the CBC objects to the label government funded. So apparently they said to Elon, or they tweeted out, we're not 70% funded. We're less than 70% funded. To which Elon Musk wittily and funnily said, Canadian Broadcasting Corp said they're, quote, less than 70% government funded, end quote. So we corrected the label. And he put in 69% government funded media. Because, most people, even though 69 tends to be a funny number when you're flipping 12 or when you're watching Billy Madison, 69. It's a funny number. It is also the next whole increment less than 70. So when the CBC says, we're less than 70% funded. All right, here you go, 69%. Piss off, CBC. Some people don't get the joke or need to find a reason to be outraged. And Rachel Gilmore, award-winning journalist, and I feel bad giving her a hard time because I feel bad for her. Something's just wrong. It's impossible to be this indoctrinated, this anchored to the propaganda, but she is. Oh my effing God, she says. Two grown-ass dudes with big boy jobs. Who the hell talks like this? Laughing about a 69 joke while attacking the credibility of one of the main news organizations in Canada. Oh, they're one of the main news organizations because they get 70% of their funding from the government, Rachel, but we'll get there. Two grown-ass dudes with big boy jobs laughing about 60. Okay. There, now everyone is happy. The funny thing is this. I've got a dirty sense of humor. I even dare say, if I do the Rorschach test, I will always see genitalia. Even I did not look at that and view it as a 69 joke. I viewed it as a semantics joke. And I had to extend as much of my opinion to Rachel. It wasn't a sex joke. It was semantics. I guess technically, Elon could have done I'll take off 0.1%. Therefore, they're 69.9%. That's not funny. He could have done 5%, but then someone's going to say, well, why not 69%? Why did you take off 5%? The joke was not in the 69. The joke was in, we're less than 70. All right, 69, piss off. And what does the CBC do? We're pausing. I think I have that tweet. We're pausing our activities on Twitter. Good riddance to bad rubbish, CBC. And I mean that in the most sincere, conceivable way. Good riddance to bad rubbish. But hold on, we have to go check out Rachel Gilmore's journalism before we can move on to the next aspect of the CBC's idiotic the outrage. Listen to this, by the way. I gesticulate with my hands, so I'm not going to make fun of people who do. But look at the way she just... no, I'm joking. This is Rachel Gilmore breaking down the injustice that has been perpetrated against not just the CBC News, but against the truth itself.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre just called CBC News, which is one of the biggest news outlets in Canada.
Why, Rachel? Why is the CBC News one of the biggest news outlets in Canada? Is it because of their quality reporting? Is it because people actually tune in to watch them? Is it because they succeed on their own merit and they generate revenue the way Fox News does? Hell no. It's because it's government subsidized propaganda. And don't worry, I bring the receipts. It's one of the biggest in Canada because it's government subsidized, Rachel.
Propaganda.
Yeah, he called it propaganda.
Which is an outright lie.
That's a conclusion. That's not a fact. Why is it a lie, Rachel? Oh, I'll give you the evidence as to why it's outright government propaganda. When the biggest outlet in the country, only because they're subsidized by the government, all that they do is reiterate, according to police, according to government, when all that they do is run stories that parrot the talking points of the government, that's propaganda. That is state-funded propaganda, but it gets worse.
And he said it after Elon Musk labeled CBC News government-funded media.
Which they are.
Despite the fact that it's a crown corporation, arm's length from government, and completely editorially independent.
A crown corporation, I need to get this word salad here. It's a crown corporation.
Completely editorially independent.
Hold on.
Arm's length from government, and it's a crown corporation.
Come on.
Musk labeled CBC News government-funded media. Despite the fact that it's a crown corporation, arm's length from government, and completely editorially independent.
Arm's length from government and completely editorially independent. Just remember that.
We have then cited Elon Musk's label as evidence that CBC is, quote, not news.
It's not.
And he fundraised
propaganda.
off of it.
Good for him.
Attacking the
What, good for him. What's your problem with that, Rachel? I presume you're trying to monetize your work?
institutions that hold power to account just because you don't like them is insanely irresponsible. Without news. And he fundraised off of it.
They try to hold...
Attacking the institutions that hold power to account just because you don't like them is insanely irresponsible. Without reliable news that has editorial standards like CBC.
Editorial standards? Remind me to pull up another article about Engelhart.
Politicians go unchecked. That's bad for democracy. I'm honestly gobsmacked that any politician from any party would go this far.
Gobsmacked. Insanely idiotic. Dangerous. Can you understand the emotional rhetoric and absence of evidence in this?
Well, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, since Polyev released an entire press release about me just because I asked him questions he didn't like.
I'd like to assess that. I think if she asked questions, Pierre would answer. Crown Corporation, arm's length with total editorial independence. Did anybody bother looking up what a Crown Corporation is? I mean, it's basic. A Crown Corporation. What does a Crown Corporation mean? Crown corporations in Canada are government organizations with a mixture of commercial and public policy objectives. They are directly and wholly owned by the Crown, the government of Canada, or a province. I mean, it's just so embarrassingly juvenile and so remorselessly ignorant. I should say, let me say, shamelessly ignorant. Crown corporations, just Wikipedia. I mean, it's not the best, but a Crown corporation is a corporation created by the Crown under Canadian law. Not everybody gets to be a Crown corporation. And the Crown corporations are things like CN Rail, things that have national importance, or, as Wikipedia rightly points out, a mixture of commercial and public policy objectives. There is a public policy objective to the CBC. They are governed by the Broadcasting Act. It has requirements for the CBC's content. CanCon, a very funny name, Canadian content. Their very content is regulated by law. Crown corporations represent a special form of state-owned enterprise. Each corporation is ultimately accountable to federal or provincial parliament through a relevant minister for the conduct of its affairs. I mean, for God's sake, Rachel, arm's length, they're not, by definition, they're not arm's length. Editorial independence, by definition, there is, I won't say that the government tells the CBC what to publish, but it has regulations that govern its content, literally. They are established by an act of parliament and report to that body via the relevant minister in cabinet, though they are, quote, shielded from constant government intervention and legislative oversight, and thus generally enjoy greater freedom from direct political control than government departments. Crown corporations are distinct from departmental corporations, yet nobody cares about that. Crown corporations have a long-standing presence in the country and have been instrumental in its formation, oh yeah, and in its propagation of government propaganda. They can provide services required by the public that otherwise would not be economically viable, such as private enterprise. Viable as a private enterprise. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, like private media doesn't succeed on its own. Rebel News is doing quite well without government handouts. Whatever. In 2022, maybe I want to read that. They are involved in everything from distribution, use, and price of certain goods, yada, yada, yada. 2022, there were 47 crown corporations in Canada. Provinces and territories operate their own. All right. Yeah. No, totally independent, totally arm's length, and totally not governed by laws that literally regulate the type of content that they have to produce, which is exactly why nobody wants the Broadcasting Act applying to online streaming or online services, because nobody wants the government telling Viva Frei, Rebel News, Post Millennial that you've got to have enough Canadian content if you want to be good in Canadian algorithm, in the algorithm in Canada. It gets better. It only gets better. Oh, okay. So Rachel Gilmore probably now knows that what she had reported was inaccurate, wildly inaccurate, wildly misleading, and a disservice to people who rely on Rachel Gilmore for news. But I say I bring the receipts. Remember the definition of Crown Corporation that we've just listened to. I went back and here. Let's just do this here. This is. Oh my God. A Crown Corporation that lives off taxpayer dollars, that gets angry that Twitter has labeled them government funded, which they are. They serve the people. They are funded by the people. They're funded involuntarily by the people. You know, there's that old bumper sticker, taxation is theft. I'm going to make a new one. Taxation is not theft. It's armed robbery. I don't want to fund the CBC. I don't want to fund the CBC. But the amount that I paid in Canadian taxes, I have funded what I believe to be propagandists and the enemy of the very people who finance their activities. When these people came out at the CBC and demonized anti-vaxxers, demonized people who didn't want to get the vaccine, wait until you see the examples when they encouraged neighbors to snitch on their white neighbors, when they said that truckers were using children as human shields. I don't know if they use that exact term, but we'll get the article. I had to finance that involuntarily. Taxation is not just theft. It is armed robbery, because the government has the guns in Canada, and the government comes to you and says, you're going to pay your taxes, and you're going to pay a lot of them because it's Canada, and you're going to fund this propaganda that hates you. You are going to fund this propaganda that villainizes, demonizes you. Anyway, so CBC, state funded with my taxpayer dollars. Our journalism is impartial and independent. Bullshit! To suggest otherwise is untrue. Well, they should quote Rachel Gilmore here. That is why we are pausing our activities on Twitter. Notre journalisme est impartial et indépendant. Prétendre le contraire est faux. C'est pourquoi nous suspendons nos activités sur Twitter. Et bon voyage. Good riddance to bad rubbish. But it's not just that they leave. They restrict replies. Who can reply? People who CBC Radio Canada mentioned can reply. Can you mention me? I've got a few things to tell you, CBC. Hashtag goodbye CBC. Oh, that's what we're pausing. Hey, here's another thing, CBC. Nobody came to Twitter to read your propaganda. People came to Twitter as a social media platform once upon a time so they could make jokes, interact with other people, not so they could read your government-funded propaganda, your government-funded disinformation. Oh, hold on. I'm going to find one before I forget. CBC, Alberta teen COVID death. There we go. I can't find the original story. Just by way of one fantastically cynical, disgusting example of CBC. I can't find the original story where I maybe should to see if they actually reported it. This was the Dina Hinshaw, Alberta, claiming that COVID has just taken the life of a 14-year-old teenager, making it the province's youngest COVID death. Alberta's reporting of comorbidities questioned after boy 14 removed from COVID death count because he died of stage 4 brain cancer. But his death, because again, going back to Marxism, going back to Stalinism, going back to Great Purge, Russia, madness, exploit, lie about it, and make victims. We're victims. Exploit death and tragedy for political gain. We don't need to go into this whole thing. This was 9 months after being diagnosed with stage 4 brain tumor, and 2 days after his family says he tested positive for COVID, he died at the hospital. When Dina Hinshaw told Albertans earlier this week that the 14-year-old had died of COVID, the province's chief medical officer of health triggered a wave of controversy. How she effing lied and exploited the death of a child to further her agenda. How much more disgusting does it get than that? But thanks, you're very kind on her. But let me just see if they actually ever reported this the way that I think they did at the time. Hina apologizes. Okay, let's just look up October 14. We're going to want to find one that's maybe. I don't know if we're going to find it. It would be one example. I'll say I don't need to rely on an unclear example when I have plenty of clear examples of why the CBC is hardcore government propaganda. What was that movie called? It was called Hardcore Propaganda. Hardcore Logo. That was the Rock movie, not Hardcore Propaganda. Here, let's see exactly how state government-funded propaganda does what it does. Here's one example from the convoy. They're all going to come from the convoy. CBC News. CBC News. Protest convoy had, quote, worst display of Nazi propaganda in this country, anti-hate advocate says. Oh, that's just the CBC, just repeating. Who is it? It's the anti-hate network, the thoroughly reliable anti-hate network. The CBC runs a headline that the Ottawa protest was the worst display of Nazi propaganda in this country. CBC says, but don't worry, it's not the CBC saying it. They're just quoting the anti-hate network. The highly impartial, highly reliable anti-hate network. Oh, the anti-hate network that receives government funding as well? This is the incestuous holy trinity of government-subsidized propaganda. The anti-hate network took a lot of money from the government, unless I'm mistaken. But the CBC is not saying it. They're just repeating it, in quotes, while referencing another government-subsidized propagandist. We're going to take a couple of the really good ones. This was one of my absolute favorites. When people say that the CBC is not government-subsidized propaganda, look at this. Look at this. The CBC is reporting the news. They're not crafting the narrative. They're not telling you what to think. Anger over defacement of Terry Fox statue, a sign of his, quote, unique legacy. Hold on. Anger over defacement of Terry Fox statue, a sign of his unique legacy, says mayor of Icon's hometown. Oh, the CBC is not saying it again. Once again, they're just relying on a government entity, a government individual, a government subsidized somebody. This guy, the mayor of Terry Fox's hometown. Anger over the defacement. You know what the defacement was? Look at this. Look at this defacement. Do we get to see a full picture of it? Look at the defacement. Defacement. What does defacement mean? They put a billboard in Terry Fox's hand and a Canadian flag through his hand and a hat on him. I think. Let me see that. Is that a hat? And a Canada hat. The outpouring of condemnation over the defacement of a Terry Fox statue across from Parliament Hill in Ottawa this past weekend shows just how revered the Canadian icon is more than 40 years after his marathon of hope, and his untimely death at 22. Yeah. Listen to this. The statue was defaced after protesters opposed a vaccine mandates and defaced. Anyone asking the question here? I have a feeling that the term defaced or defacement requires something more substantial and more permanent. The action or process of spoiling the surface or appearance of something. I have a feeling in the ordinary parlance, defacement needs to be something more than something that can be easily removed. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Impair, destroy. To mar the appearance of, injure by effacing significant details. Something tells me it has to be a little bit more. It has to be a little more permanent than a flag, a banner, and a hat. But if that's defacement, okay, let's run with it. Terry Fox Memorial Gay Pride. Is this going to be the one? I hate TikTok. I hate TikTok. I'm something like an angel with no halo now. Okay, well, that's not what I was looking for. Where was the one where, oh, is it this one? Yeah, that might be it there. Look at the defacement. Look at the defacement of the Terry Fox. Is that Terry Fox? Look at the defacement of this statue. Hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, unless it's defacement for the celebration for me. We are all seeing this? Yeah, we're seeing it. Mark Emery on Twitter. Let me see here. I don't know if this is actually in response to the defacement of the convoy. We don't know how Terry Fox felt about gay or trans people or gay marriage or anything like that. So to impugn Terry Fox supported those things is wildly presumptive. Yet no one has never said aligning Terry Fox with the alphabet mafia was desecration. Just an example. But the CBC said it was defacement. And I'm sure that they praised it when it was done for gay pride. I'm sure. And even if I'm wrong, I don't know. Don't worry. There's more. Because, doing to the Terry Fox statue what the gay pride did is defacement. What was the first one? Oh, yes, that's right. Lying about the death of a 14-year-old kid. Totally fine. Lying about the worst display of Nazism, anti-Semitism in the history of listen to this. The protesters were using kids as human shields. They're not making the news. They're not spreading disinformation. They're just quoting the police. Large number of children among protesters hampering response. It's not the CBC saying it. They're just repeating the government's police. Police say. Deputy Chief Steve Ball says almost 1/4 of trucks in protests include children. Do they use the word human shields? Oh, look at this latest protest developments. Ottawa police working with Children's Aid Society around concerns for children in convoy. Mayor says he's had constructive discussions with Justin Trudeau and 2 ministers. Ottawa police have made 23 protest-related arrests. Yada, 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 yada. Ohio man, okay, forget that. Do they use the word human shields? They don't use the word human shield. Ottawa police say almost 25% of the trucks still involved in the ongoing demonstrations that have children in them, which have hampered. Oh my God, those nasty, anti-vaxxer, misogynist, racist, bigoted truckers, they're using children as human shields. But the CBC is totally not government propaganda because they're just quoting the police. Good riddance to bad rubbish.